Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're stepping through the heavy oak doors of a medieval castle where stone walls hold secrets that would make your favorite reality TV show look tame. You can almost smell the rushes on the floor mixed with wood smoke and, let's be honest, the distinct aroma of hundreds of people living without modern plumbing. Here's a fun fact. If you actually time travel to a medieval castle, you'd probably pass out from the stench within 5 minutes. But hey, at least the tapestries are pretty. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments below. Alright, let's begin the story. You push through those massive doors and immediately notice something strange. The Great Hall isn't dominated by knights and lords as Hollywood promised. Instead, you see women everywhere, moving with purpose, whispering in corners, and wielding authority with subtle gestures that make grown men scramble. Lady Margaret, the castle's mistress, stands near the fireplace directing what looks like a military operation. Except the troops are servants carrying linens, and the battlefield is tomorrow's feast preparation. Your modern eyes need a moment to adjust to this hierarchy, because it's nothing like your corporate org chart. At the top sits the Lord's wife, but her power isn't just ceremonial. She's the CEO when her husband rides off to war, which is basically every other Tuesday in medieval times. Below her, a complex web of noble ladies, visiting relatives, and upper servants creates a power structure that would make Machiavelli take notes. The first shock hits when you realize these women aren't decorative. Lady Margaret just ordered the castle's entire grain storage redistributed, negotiated a dispute between two merchant families, and sentenced a thief to the stocks, all before lunch. Her ladies-in-waiting aren't just holding her train. They're taking notes, carrying messages, and managing correspondence that affects entire regions. One of them, Lady Isabel, catches you staring and raises an eyebrow that somehow communicates both, "I see you," and "you have no idea what you've walked into." You watch the Castellan's wife directing castle defenses while her husband is away. Yes, medieval women literally managed military fortifications. She knows every weakness in the walls, every soldier's name, and exactly how many days the castle can withstand a siege. Historians still argue whether women formally studied military strategy or just absorbed it through necessity. But either way, when Lord Robert returns from campaign, he'll find his castle better defended than when he left it. The teenage daughters aren't playing with dolls. They're managing household accounts that would break your Excel spreadsheet. Lady Catherine, barely 14, reconciles expenses for 300 people, while her younger sister supervises the weaving room, where cloth worth more than your car is produced daily. They speak French, Latin, and enough Arabic to surprise visiting merchants, though they'll pretend they only know prayers and poetry if the bishop visits. What really bends your modern brain is the servant women's authority. The laundress doesn't just wash clothes. She controls access to the castle's most intimate secrets, because everyone's dirty laundry literally passes through her hands. The head cook manages supply chains that stretch across counties, and her approval can make or break local merchants. These women move through spaces men can't enter, hear conversations meant to be private, and build networks that historians now recognize as medieval intelligence agencies run by people everyone underestimated. You're starting to understand that medieval castles operated on two levels. The visible one, where men strutted in armor and shouted about honor, and the invisible one, where women actually got things done. It's like discovering your quiet grandmother secretly ran the mafia. Surprising, slightly terrifying, and suddenly All those family dinners make more sense. The chapel bells haven't even rung for morning prayers when you stumble into Lady Margaret's chambers. And sweet medieval Jesus. You're not prepared for this scene. She's sitting in a wooden tub, while her attendants pour pitcher after pitcher of rose-scented water over her hair, which reaches past her waist and probably weighs more than a chainmail coat when wet. The mainstream history books told you medieval people rarely bathed. But here's the castle's leading lady soaking like she's at a spa. Except the spa treatments involve ingredients that would get you arrested today. You watch in fascinated horror as her ladies prepare the morning beauty routine. First comes the face wash, urine. Yes, you heard that right. Aged urine. Specifically collected from young boys, because apparently their pee has the best whitening properties. Lady Margaret rinses her face with it like it's La Mer moisturizer. And you try not to gag while her attendants explain this prevents freckles and creates that ghostly pale complexion that screams, "I'm too rich to work outdoors." The ammonia actually does work as a mild chemical peel, though you definitely won't be adding this to your skincare routine. Next comes the hair treatment. And this is where things get properly weird, as they're massaging her scalp with a mixture of lizard tallow, rendered fat from actual lizards, mixed with swallow droppings. The theory is that since swallows fly so gracefully, their poop will make your hair flow beautifully. Medieval logic at its finest. While this biological disaster marinates in her hair, Lady Margaret starts her morning administrative work. Because medieval multitasking means reviewing household accounts while bird feces conditions your locks, the cosmetics table looks like a witch's laboratory crossed with a Sephora having a nervous breakdown. There's white lead powder for the face, which you know is slowly poisoning everyone who uses it, creating that perfect complexion, while simultaneously destroying their internal organs. The rouge is made from cinnabar, mercury sulfide, because nothing says healthy glow like toxic heavy metals for eyebrows. They're using burnt cork and mouse fur to fill in sparse areas, actual mouse fur. Some servant's job is catching mice specifically for beauty supplies. But here's the thing that modern documentaries miss. While Lady Margaret endures these tortures, she's simultaneously running a small economy between applications of cochineal insects crushed for lip color. She's dictating letters to stewards across 3 estates. Her memory holds harvest yields, tax obligations, and servant wages for hundreds of people. She knows which mills need repair, which tenants are behind on rent, and exactly how much wine is left in the castle cellars. All while someone paints her nails with a mixture that might contain ground pearls if she's feeling fancy, or ground fish scales if it's been a tough month. The morning routine includes checking her teeth with a rough cloth and sage, one of the few beauty practices that actually make sense. Then comes breath freshening with a mixture of mint, cloves, and, historians still debate whether this is true, ground up burnt deer antler. Medieval people were obsessed with sweet breath, probably because everything else smelled like a dumpster fire. So Lady Margaret chews aromatics like her social life depends on it, which it literally does. You're taking mental notes when the hairdressing begins. And this is a 3-woman job. They're creating elaborate braids that incorporate silk ribbons, small jewels, and enough pins to supply a medium-sized army. The style communicates her rank, marital status, and even political allegiances. It's basically LinkedIn profile optimization through hair architecture. One wrong braid could signal availability for marriage or support for the wrong faction during succession disputes. The final touch is plucking. Oh, the plucking. Medieval beauty standards demand a high forehead, so they're literally plucking her hairline back several inches. They also remove her eyebrows completely, because apparently having facial hair is for peasants and men. The process takes forever and looks excruciating. But Lady Margaret doesn't flinch. She's reviewing kitchen supplies and planning next month's feast menu, while someone systematically removes hair from her skull. What strikes you most is how this torture chamber of beauty runs parallel to serious administrative work. By the time Lady Margaret rises from her toilette, she's beautified for public appearance and has also resolved 2 land disputes, authorized repairs to the mill, planned a strategic marriage between 2 minor noble families, and dictated correspondence to abbeys across the region. The mainstream tale of vain medieval ladies preening for hours misses the point. This is a mobile office where business happens while Leeds slowly seeps into pause. Her final act before leaving the chamber is checking the household books one more time, because medieval accounting waits for no one, not even mercury poisoning. She adjusts an entry with hands that smell like rosewater and mouse fur, a combination that somehow perfectly encapsulates medieval castle life. Lady Margaret's daughters are supposedly learning embroidery in the solar, but you slip through the doorway to find something far more subversive happening. Sure, there's needlework scattered around. Half-finished tapestries depicting unicorns and saints provide perfect cover for what's really going on. Lady Catherine bends over what looks like religious text, but you catch glimpses of Arabic numerals and geometric diagrams that definitely aren't prayers to the Virgin Mary. The tutor, a seemingly harmless elderly woman introduced as their needlework instructor, is actually explaining Ptolemaic astronomy while pretending to discuss thread colors. She points to constellation patterns in the embroidery design while secretly teaching celestial navigation. It's brilliant. If the bishop walks in, they're just stitching stars onto fabric, and nobody needs to know those stars correspond to actual astronomical calculations that would get everyone labeled as heretics. You settle into a corner and watch this educational rebellion unfold. Lady Catherine's younger sister, Elisande, works on what appears to be a decorative border pattern, but is actually practicing mathematical equations. Each flower represents a number, each vine a mathematical operation. She's basically doing algebra through needlepoint. And you're honestly impressed by the creativity required to turn textile work into secret STEM education. The books, hidden beneath embroidery frames, would make a medieval priest faint. There's Aristotle's natural philosophy, translated medical texts from Islamic scholars, and, most shocking, a copied manuscript on engineering and siege warfare. These girls know more about trebuchet physics than most knights at. Historians still argue whether noble women received formal education in these subjects or acquired knowledge through sheer determination and clever subterfuge. But here's your answer: both. Delivered through an underground network that makes modern homeschooling look basic, Lady Catherine suddenly switches to actual French poetry when footsteps echo in the corridor. And by the time a servant enters, everyone appears deeply focused on their needles. The transformation is so smooth you almost believe it yourself. The servant delivers a message and leaves, completely unaware he just interrupted a lesson on hydraulic engineering, disguised as discussion about silk thread tension. What really blows your mind is their Latin, not the churchy kind. These girls read classical texts that university students would struggle with. They're passing Cicero while pretending to memorize Psalms, and their prayer books contain everything from Greek philosophy to Hebrew texts. One girl, near the window, is definitely reading Ovid's extremely not safe for work poetry, while maintaining an expression of religious devotion that deserves an Oscar. The mathematical education hidden in plain sight is particularly clever. They use their embroidery patterns to calculate proportions, understand geometry, and even explore early concepts of physics. When Lady Catherine creates a complex rose window design, she's actually working through architectural principles that will help her manage castle construction projects in the future. Her tutor guides her through load-bearing calculations, while discussing how to achieve the perfect petal curve. You notice they're also learning practical chemistry disguised as household management. Mixing dyes for thread involves understanding chemical reactions. Creating pigments requires knowledge of minerals and compounds. And preserving fabrics teaches them about acids and bases. They're essentially running a chemistry lab that produces pretty cushion covers as a byproduct. One girl experiments with mordants that fix dyes to cloth, casually discovering principles that university alchemists would claim as groundbreaking. The language education extends beyond the classical. These young ladies speak merchant Italian, diplomatic French, scholarly Latin, and enough Arabic to surprise visiting traders. But here's the kicker. They pretend to struggle with basic French phrases when male visitors are present. You watch Lady Elisande brilliantly mistranslate a simple greeting for a visiting knight, then turn around and read a complex Arabic mathematical treatise without hesitation. Their secret library is hidden inside hollowed-out prayer books and false-bottom sewing boxes. You spot copies of Christine de Pisan's writings, a medieval woman who dared to argue that women deserved education and respect, and there's also a hand-copied version of Hildegard of Bingen's medical texts, annotated with their own observations. These girls aren't just consuming knowledge, they're contributing to it, adding their own discoveries about herbal remedies and astronomical observations. The most dangerous element of their education is rhetoric and logic. They practice formal debate while pretending to discuss fabric choices, learning to construct arguments that would be forbidden in public discourse. Lady Catherine just demolished her sister's position on trade regulations, using Aristotelian logic while ostensibly arguing about sleeve lengths. Their tutor beams with pride while maintaining the facade of correcting their cross-stitch technique. As the lesson continues, you realize these secret education chambers exist in castles across Europe, creating an invisible network of educated women who officially know nothing beyond prayers and poetry. They'll use this knowledge to manage estates, broker peace treaties, and run medieval economies while men congratulate themselves on keeping women properly ignorant. It's the longest-running con in history, and it's happening right here between discussions of thread count and tambour frames. The kitchen stairs spiral down into medieval chaos, and you're immediately hit by heat that makes a modern pizza oven feel like a gentle breeze. But forget the roasting meats and bubbling cauldrons. The real power in this underground kingdom flows through whispered conversations between women who supposedly just cook and clean. You squeeze past a girl carrying fresh bread and realize you've entered the nerve center of the castle's intelligence network, where information is seasoned and served alongside the daily meals. Meet Agnes, the head cook, who runs this operation like a CIA director with better knife skills. She stands at the massive central hearth directing 30 women with hand gestures that communicate complex instructions about both tonight's feast and which merchant is secretly selling to the castle's enemies, her sources. Every servant who's ever overheard a conversation, every laundress who's found suspicious letters in pockets, every chambermaid who's noticed which lords meet in dark corners. You watch slack-jawed as a scullery maid sidles up to Agnes and mutters something about the wine merchant's daughter seeing French soldiers 2 villages over. This information will reach Lady Margaret before her husband's official scouts report it, transmitted through a network that makes medieval Wi-Fi look slow. The kitchen women have perfected the art of being invisible while handling the castle's most vital resources, food, drink, and secrets that could start wars. The smuggling operation runs smoother than Amazon Prime. These women control what enters the castle through the kitchen deliveries, and that includes a lot more than turnips, wrapped in flour sacks and hidden in cheese wheels. You spot silk that definitely didn't pay import taxes, spices that are supposedly banned during wartime. And is that a sealed letter hidden in a wheel of aged cheddar? The dairymaid winks at you and tucks it deeper into her basket. Here's what historians still argue about. Were these networks formally organized or spontaneous? Watching Agnes coordinate her team, you have your answer. This is structured like a medieval corporation, where your performance review is conducted in code over bread kneading. The hierarchy is clear. Agnes at the top. Then her trusted lieutenants who run different sections, down to the newest pot scrubbers who are basically interns learning the trade of espionage while peeling endless onions. The political intelligence gathering is particularly impressive, and kitchen servants attend every feast, standing behind guests to refill wine cups and clear plates. They're perfectly positioned to overhear everything from military plans to inheritance disputes. One server, Marie, has developed a system of plate arrangements that signals which conversations are worth monitoring. A spoon placed at a certain angle means listen carefully, while crossed knives indicate get word to Lady Margaret immediately. You notice the women speak in layered code that sounds like kitchen talk to casual listeners. The soup needs more salt means a particular lord is planning betrayal. The bread is rising nicely indicates favorable negotiations. The meat is spoiled warns of immediate danger. They've created an entire language from culinary metaphors that lets them communicate openly without arousing suspicion. Even you, knowing what to look for, can barely follow the rapid-fire exchanges. The gossip network extends far beyond castle walls. Kitchen women marry soldiers, merchants, farmers, creating information highways that stretch across kingdoms. Agnes receives recipe exchanges that are actually intelligence reports from her sister in a castle 3 days' ride away. Her niece works in a monastery kitchen and passes along which nobles are suddenly making large donations, usually meaning they're dying or plotting something requiring divine forgiveness. What really amazes you is their memory. These women track bloodlines, alliances, affairs, debts, and grudges without writing anything down. Agnes knows which knight owes money to which merchant, whose wife is pregnant by someone else's husband, and which alliances are held together by threads thinner than her pastry dough. She stores this information like a medieval database, retrieving relevant details instantly when needed. The economic control is staggering. By managing food supplies, kitchen women influence local markets more than any guild. Agnes decides which merchants get castle contracts, effectively making or breaking businesses. She negotiates prices with the authority of a CFO, leveraging bulk purchases and threatening to switch suppliers with ruthless efficiency. Local farmers court her favor more carefully than they would any nobleman. You're pondering this shadow economy when a young kitchen maid accidentally drops a tray near you. As you help her gather scattered vegetables, she palms a small rolled parchment from between 2 carrots and slips it into her apron. The smooth motion tells you this accident was anything but. These women have turned clumsiness into tradecraft, using spills and mishaps to pass messages undetected. The real kicker comes when you realize the kitchen women are literate, at least enough to handle their shadow operations. They read delivery manifests, leave notes in flour bins, and maintain mental inventories that would challenge modern spreadsheets on. But when the castle steward arrives, they suddenly can't tell salt from sugar without his learned guidance. The performance is so convincing you almost believe it yourself, until Agnes shoots you a look that says, "Keep your mouth shut if you know what's good for you." The sharp scent of crushed herbs leads you to a tower room where Margot the midwife is teaching her apprentices something that could get them all burned at the stake. She holds up a sprig of pennyroyal while calmly explaining its proper use for settling stomachs. But the meaningful glances between the women tell a different story. You've stumbled into medieval women's healthcare, where the line between medicine and witchcraft is thinner than parchment and twice as flammable. Margot isn't just catching babies. She's the keeper of medical knowledge that predates Christianity and will outlive several popes who'd prefer it destroyed. Her shelves contain jars that would make a modern pharmacist nervous. Ergot fungus for controlling bleeding or inducing labor when needed. Willow bark for pain. And mysterious tinctures labeled only with symbols that look suspiciously pagan. She practices medicine in an era when male physicians diagnose illness by checking urine color against a wheel chart, while refusing to actually examine female patients. You watch her prepare a remedy for Lady Catherine's women's troubles, mixing herbs with practiced precision while muttering measurements in a dialect that predates Norman French. The apprentices take careful notes in a cipher disguised as household accounting marks. They're learning dosages that can heal or harm, preserve life or prevent it, ease suffering or, if the situation demands, ensure someone's suffering looks entirely natural. The knowledge transmission system is ingenious. Songs that sound like innocent lullabies actually contain recipes for medicines. Rockabye Baby includes instructions for brewing willow bark tea if you know which words to emphasize. Embroidery patterns passed between midwives encode herbal combinations. A rose next to fennel means one thing. Next to tansy means something entirely different and significantly more controversial. Margot demonstrates wound treatment using techniques that won't be discovered by male surgeons for another 3 centuries. She knows about keeping wounds clean with wine, using honey as an antimicrobial, and suturing with silk thread so fine it seems to dissolve into healing flesh. When pressed about where she learned this, she credits traditional wisdom from her grandmother, conveniently leaving out that her grandmother learned it from Moorish texts that are definitely on the church's banned list. The contraceptive knowledge hidden in this room would spark a medieval #MeToo movement if it got out. These women know about Queen Anne's lace seeds, silphium alternatives, and barrier methods involving wool soaked in various substances. They disguise this information as remedies for promoting regular courses or encouraging the womb to expel bad humors. Every woman in the castle knows what these euphemisms really mean, while the men remain blissfully ignorant that their wives control fertility with more precision than prayer allows. You're particularly fascinated by their diagnostic methods, while university-trained physicians rely on astrology and humor theory. Margot actually examines her patients. She checks pulse points unknown to male doctors, palpates abdomens with skilled fingers, and reads signs in skin color and breath that escape formal medical texts. Her accuracy rate probably exceeds anything achieved by the bleeding and purging crowd at medical schools. The political power of midwives becomes clear when a messenger arrives and Lord Robert's mistress is pregnant, and Margot is summoned for a consultation. Everyone knows this could go several ways: ensuring a healthy birth that legitimizes a bastard, managing a miscarriage that preserves everyone's reputation, or simply providing silence that's worth its weight in gold. Margot's knowledge makes her untouchable. Too many noble secrets pass through her hands for anyone to risk her displeasure. Historians still debate whether medieval midwives were proto-scientists or superstitious practitioners. But watching Margot work resolves that false dichotomy. She uses empirical observation, adjusts treatments based on results, and maintains case notes in her coded system. Sure, she also hangs dried ravens' feet over the doorway and mutters charms while mixing medicines. But her success rate speaks louder than any university degree. The apprenticeship system ensures this knowledge survives, despite periodic witch hunts. Each midwife trains multiple students, but only 1 or 2 receive the complete education. The others learn enough to deliver babies safely and treat common ailments. This cell structure means Even if authorities arrest one midwife, the knowledge network remains intact. It's basically medieval information security through redundancy. You notice they're also teaching anatomy using clever workarounds. Official dissection is forbidden. But these women study animal organs from the kitchen, drawing parallels that male physicians would find scandalous. They understand internal structures through hands-on experience that university students lack. One apprentice sketches uterine positions while ostensibly drawing flowers. Her accuracy suggesting she's attended more births than most doctors ever will. The scariest part of their practice is the political leverage. Margot knows which noble ladies have taken lovers, which have terminated pregnancies, which have birthing injuries that prevent future heirs. She holds secrets that could topple dynasties, all while maintaining the humble demeanor of a simple herbwoman. Her real protection isn't the dried wolfsbane hanging from the rafters. It's the mutual assured destruction if anyone moves against her. As you prepare to leave, Margot hands you a small bundle of lavender for peaceful sleep. The meaningful look she gives you suggests it might do more than that. But you're not brave enough to ask. Walking away, you realize these medieval healers are practicing medicine, chemistry, psychology, and political intelligence simultaneously, all while dodging accusations of witchcraft. No wonder they outlive most of their patients. The great hall buzzes with what appears to be innocent socializing after dinner. But you've learned to see past medieval surfaces. Lady Margaret sits with 3 visiting noblewomen near the fireplace, their conversation floating between French poetry and thread colors, while their eyes conduct entirely different negotiations. You edge closer and realize you're witnessing marriage brokerage that would make modern dating apps look primitive. These women are trading in bloodlines, alliances, and territories while pretending to discuss winter fashion. Lady Isabella mentions her nephew needs a wife, describing his lands with the casual precision of a real estate agent who memorizes every profitable detail. The widow Lady Constance immediately counters with her daughter's dowry, listing properties like she's reading a financial portfolio. They smile and sip wine while calculating political advantages with mathematical precision that would impress Wall Street traders. Every giggle is strategic. Every compliment carries compound interest. The negotiation layers are dizzying. Surface level. They're discussing whether young Eleanor prefers blonde or dark-haired men. Actual level. They're debating whether an alliance with the Northern Lords outweighs the economic benefits of marrying into the merchant-rich Eastern families. Meta-level. They're testing each other's knowledge of affairs, bastards, and health problems that could affect breeding potential. It's like watching chess played with human pieces who don't know they're on the board. You notice Lady Margaret's daughter Catherine pretending to embroider, while actually taking notes on which families are desperate enough to accept unfavorable terms. She tracks offers and counter-offers in stitches that look decorative, but encode financial negotiations. Tomorrow, she'll transfer this information to the household's private records, maintaining a database of marriage possibilities that spans 3 kingdoms and includes credit ratings for every noble house. The Virgin's Market, and that's essentially what this is, operates on intelligence. These women gather through their networks. Lady Constance knows Lord William's son prefers men because her lady's maid sister works in his household. This information dramatically affects his marriage value, though they'll find him an understanding wife who wants children without the husband. Everyone wins except historians who still argue whether medieval people understood sexual orientation. What's particularly fascinating is how they circumvent male authority. Officially, fathers and brothers arrange marriages. Practically, by the time men sit down to negotiate, the women have already decided everything. They've performed background checks that would make the FBI jealous. investigated financial records through kitchen servant networks, and even arranged chance meetings between potential couples at religious festivals. The men think they're in charge while ratifying decisions made months ago over needlework. Lady Isabella casually mentions her nephew's battle injury while describing his recent tournament victory. Every woman present understands she's diplomatically announcing his infertility. Crushed by a lance in an unfortunate location, this transforms the negotiation, because now they're discussing which desperate heiress needs a husband who won't ask questions about the heir's actual parentage, medieval solutions for medieval problems. All arranged with smiles and wine, the financial negotiations hidden in this feminine chatter would shock modern economists. These women understand compound interest, international exchange rates, and commodity futures better than most merchants. When Lady Margaret mentions her daughter's dowry includes rights to the mill at Westford, everyone mentally calculates annual revenues, maintenance costs, and profit margins. They're basically running a medieval Goldman Sachs with better manners and more realistic risk assessment. You're amazed by their memory for genealogy. Lady Constance can recite bloodlines back 7 generations, including every cousin's marriage and their children's prospects. She knows which families carry haemophilia, which tend toward madness, and which produce suspiciously weak children. This genetic counseling, primitive but effective, happens entirely through women's networks, while male physicians debate whether the womb wanders around the body causing hysteria. The matchmaking extends beyond nobility. These ladies arrange marriages for their servants, creating loyalty networks that span territories. A kitchen maid married to a merchant's son becomes a trade connection. A groom's daughter wedded to a monastery's stable master provides intelligence from the church. They're building economic and political infrastructure through strategic reproduction, playing a game measured in generations. Here's the kicker. They're also arranging their own remarriages. 2 widows in this circle are negotiating their next husbands, while their current ones lie dying upstairs. Lady Constance has already picked her next spouse based on his lands adjoining hers and his convenient lack of living sons. She'll mourn appropriately when the time comes, then execute a marriage plan developed while her husband still breathed. Medieval efficiency at its finest. The code switching is masterful. When Lord Robert enters, the conversation instantly shifts to pure frivolity, silk prices and puppet shows. He pats his wife's hand condescendingly and leaves, never knowing he just interrupted negotiations affecting 3 generations of political alliances. The women wait exactly long enough to seem natural, then resume plotting bloodline futures with the ruthlessness of genetic engineers. As the evening ends, you realize these marriage brokers have created a parallel power structure based on reproductive politics. They control inheritance through strategic breeding, shift territories through dowries, and forge alliances through children who don't yet exist. The official chronicles will record kings and battles, but the real medieval history is being written in these firelight negotiations between women who understand that marriage is war by other means. The morning crowd at the castle gate looks typical enough. Merchants with carts, pilgrims seeking hospitality, farmers delivering produce. But you've learned to spot the subtle differences. And that woman arguing with the guards about her spoiled silk shipment is definitely more than she appears, Beatrice, the cloth merchant, wears modest wool, while her fingers flash rings worth more than most knights' armor, and her simple cart conceals compartments that would make smugglers weep with envy. You follow her into the castle courtyard, where she transforms from humble tradeswoman to sharp negotiator. The act drops faster than her supposedly damaged silk, which miraculously recovers its quality once she's past the tax-collecting guards. Lady Margaret greets her like an old friend, because that's exactly what she is, a merchant princess who built her empire by understanding that medieval commerce runs on relationships, and relationships are built in women's chambers, not guild halls. The real business happens in the solar, where embroidery provides cover for international trade negotiations. Beatrice spreads samples across tables while discussing thread counts and dye quality. But the real conversation involves credit terms, bulk pricing, and exclusive distribution rights. And she's offering Lady Margaret first choice of Flemish wool that technically shouldn't be available due to ongoing conflicts, sourced through a network of women who transcend political boundaries because commerce doesn't care about your king's current enemy list. You watch Beatrice casually mention that she needs safe passage through Lord Robert's lands next month. In exchange, she'll ensure Lady Margaret's daughter's wedding dress includes Byzantine silk that will make every other noblewoman gnash their teeth with envy. It's quid pro quo disguised as girl talk, and both women understand the game perfectly. The male merchants waiting in the Great Hall have no idea the real deals are being struck upstairs over honeyed wine and careful flattery. The financial instruments these women use would confuse modern bankers. Beatrice extends credit based on future harvests, accepts payment in everything from cheese wheels to marriage promises, and maintains mental ledgers that track debts across decades. She mentions that Lady Constance still owes her for fabric delivered 3 winters ago, payable whenever Constance's son inherits his grandfather's estates. It's long-term investment banking conducted entirely through verbal contracts between women who trust each other more than any written document. What's brilliant is how they navigate guild restrictions. Officially, women can't join merchant guilds or trade independently in many cities. Beatrice circumvents this by being technically married to a drooling invalid who hasn't left his bed in 5 years. His seal on documents means nothing. Everyone knows Beatrice runs the operation. She maintains the fiction while building an empire that spans from London to Constantinople, all because medieval law is easier to work around than change. The intelligence trading is as valuable as the silk. Beatrice knows which lords are secretly bankrupt, which castles desperately need grain before winter, which noble daughters require quick marriages to hide pregnancies. She trades this information for protection, exclusive contracts, and occasional blind eyes when her caravans carry more than fabric. Lady Margaret pays in similar currency, safe passages, introductions to other nobles, and warnings about which routes to avoid this season. You notice other merchant women arriving throughout the day. The spice trader who claims her husband sent her, he's been dead 2 years. The goldsmith's widow, whose husband conveniently stays home while she negotiates contracts. The wine merchant who inherited her father's business and expanded it tenfold, while maintaining she's just keeping it warm for her infant son. They congregate in the solar like a medieval chamber of commerce. If chambers of commerce plotted international trade while discussing embroidery patterns, the money laundering, though they'd never call it that, is particularly clever. Beatrice accepts stolen goods from Lady Margaret's less scrupulous relatives, transforms them through her network, and returns clean profit. A chest of silver plate taken in a border raid becomes Flemish cloth, becomes Spanish wine, becomes legitimate coin. Everyone benefits. Nobody asks questions. And the transformation happens through women's hands. While men debate honor in the Great Hall below, historians still argue whether medieval women participated significantly in commerce. But here's your evidence. Beatrice coordinates supply chains that require multilingual correspondence, mathematical precision, and diplomatic immunity. She navigates different currencies, calculates exchange rates in her head, and maintains quality control across workshops in 6 cities. Her apprentices, all women, learn skills that university-educated men lack, hidden under the pretense of domestic training. The afternoon brings the real shock. Beatrice, produces a letter of credit from Italian bankers, made out to her, not her invalid husband. She's been building independent financial credibility through careful negotiations and strategic bribes. This document represents freedom most medieval women can't imagine, the ability to trade internationally under her own name. Lady Margaret examines it with the reverence usually reserved for holy relics. As evening approaches, Beatrice prepares to leave, her carts now loaded with products for her return journey. She's traded foreign silk for local wool, collected intelligence worth its weight in gold, and strengthened alliances that will protect her caravans for another season. The guards who gave her trouble this morning now bow respectfully, having received word from Lady Margaret that this merchant enjoys special protection. You realize these commercial infiltrators form an economic network that parallels and sometimes exceeds official trade routes. They move goods, information, and influence through channels invisible to male authorities, building wealth and power one transaction at a time. The medieval economy runs on their negotiations, even as official records pretend they're just buying thread for their needlework. The castle settles into darkness, but you've learned that medieval nighttime is when the real action happens, following the soft glow of candles and whispered voices. You descend stone steps worn smooth by centuries of secret footsteps. The chapel undercroft should be empty at this hour, but instead you find 24 women arranged in a circle that definitely isn't for evening prayers, and the air smells of sage and something older, earthier, that makes your modern sensibilities nervous. Lady Margaret leads what can only be described as extremely unofficial activities. She's traded her Christian piety for something that predates the cross by several thousand years, and the other women follow her lead with practiced ease. They're chanting in a dialect that sounds like Welsh had a baby with Latin and raised it in the woods. You recognize the kitchen maids, several noble ladies, and, surprisingly, the elderly nun who runs the castle's hospital. Apparently, religious boundaries get flexible after dark. The meeting begins with what they call remembrances, sharing medical knowledge, harvest predictions, and remedies that would horrify the church. Each woman contributes something. Teresa the laundress knows which herbs prevent conception. Lady Catherine shares astronomical observations that predict weather patterns. And the nun, Sister Agatha, you think, demonstrates a healing technique involving pressure points that seem suspiciously Eastern. They're preserving and transmitting knowledge that officially doesn't exist. You realize this is a literacy circle disguised as heretical practice, or maybe vice versa. Hidden among the suspicious herbs and definitely not Christian symbols are books, real books, in vernacular languages. Lady Margaret produces a manuscript of Christine de Pisan's writings, reading aloud about women's intellectual capabilities, while her audience nods knowingly. They pass around texts that question male authority, discuss female anatomy without shame, and suggest that Eve maybe got a bad rap in the whole garden incident. The code switching when footsteps echo above is instantaneous. Pagan symbols disappear under skirts. Books transform into prayer missals, and suddenly everyone's singing Ave Maria with conviction that would fool the Pope. A guard peers down, sees nothing but devout women holding a late-night prayer vigil, and retreats. The second his footsteps fade, they're back to discussing whether the moon's phase affects menstrual cycles and sharing recipes for flying ointment. That sounds suspiciously psychoactive. What's fascinating is the demographic mix. Noble ladies sit next to servants. Young women learn from crones. And religious status means nothing in this circle. The usual medieval hierarchies dissolve in candlelight as they share knowledge considered too dangerous for daylight. You spot Lady Isabella teaching arithmetic to a kitchen maid, who'll use it to expand her black market brewing operation. Sister Agatha shows Lady Catherine's daughter advanced surgical techniques the Church claims only men can understand. The real rebellion happens when they practice reading and writing. Most medieval women are supposedly illiterate, but this circle runs a secret school that would shame universities. They teach each other languages, share manuscripts copied by hand, and compose their own texts. One young woman reads her poem about female desire, with imagery that would make Chaucer blush. Another shares her translation of Arabic mathematical texts. They're creating a parallel intellectual tradition that historians won't discover for centuries. The pagan elements are impossible to ignore. They honor seasons and cycles the Church tried to erase, maintaining agricultural knowledge wrapped in ritual. When they bless the coming harvest, they're actually sharing complex farming techniques passed down through generations. The goddess worship includes practical midwifery, herbalism, and astronomy. It's science dressed as spirituality, because that's the only way to preserve it without burning. You watch them practice what can only be called medieval networking. They arrange economic partnerships, plan coordinated responses to male authority, and share intelligence gathered through their various positions. The washerwomen will suddenly coordinate to disrupt castle operations if Lord Robert threatens one of their own. The noble ladies will mysteriously suffer simultaneous illnesses if forced into unwanted marriages. They're building solidarity that transcends class, all while pretending to worship moon goddesses. The meeting reaches its climax when Lady Margaret produces a leather-bound ledger. This isn't spiritual, it's financial. They're running a lending circle, pooling resources to fund women's ventures that banks won't touch. Beatrice, the merchant, borrowed startup funds here. The alewife, who now owns 3 taverns, got her seed money from this circle. They charge interest that would make Jewish moneylenders reasonable, but they also forgive debts when children need feeding. It's predatory capitalism with a feminist heart. Historians still debate whether medieval witchcraft accusations had any basis in reality. Watching this gathering, you understand the truth. Yes, women gathered at night to practice forbidden activities, but those activities were education, economic cooperation, and preserving knowledge the patriarchy wanted destroyed. The witchcraft was female autonomy. The devil worship was refusing to accept their assigned roles. The heresy was believing women deserved better. As dawn approaches, the circle disperses with practiced efficiency. Books vanish into hidden pockets. Ritual items transform back into household goods. And 24 conspirators become proper medieval women who would never dream of challenging authorities. They climb the stairs at intervals, returning to their chambers or duties, carrying with them knowledge and connections that will subtly reshape castle life. You follow last, head spinning from what you've witnessed. These forbidden gatherings aren't dark Sabbaths, but midnight universities, mutual aid societies, and group therapy sessions combined. They're preserving pre-Christian knowledge, advancing female literacy, and building economic power, all while risking their lives. The candles are extinguished, but the revolution continues to smolder in every woman who attended. Lady Catherine's pregnancy should be a time of joy and needlepoint, but watching her navigate court politics while growing an heir is like observing someone juggle flaming swords while walking a tightrope. She sits in the solar looking serene, one hand on her swelling belly, while using the other to write coded letters that will determine whether her child inherits a duchy or a death sentence. And the Game of Thrones gets deadly when you're carrying a potential player. You've noticed her pregnancy announcement triggered more political maneuvering than a declaration of war. Suddenly, every noble family recalculates their positions based on this unborn child's potential alliances. Lady Catherine receives gifts that are really bribes. A golden rattle from the Duke who wants her child betrothed to his grandson, poisoned sweetmeats from rivals, intercepted by her taster, and books of prayers that contain coded messages about which faction will protect her if Lord Robert dies in battle. The medical management alone would terrify modern doctors, her physician, who refuses to actually examine her because touching noble women is improper, diagnoses everything by urine color and astrological charts. Meanwhile, Margot the midwife provides actual healthcare through kitchen visits, monitoring the baby's position and Lady Catherine's health, while pretending to discuss feast preparations. The official medical advice includes avoiding strawberries, they'll birthmark the baby, and staring at beautiful paintings for aesthetic offspring. The real medical care happens when men aren't watching. What's truly chess-like is how Lady Catherine weaponizes her condition. She claims morning sickness during inconvenient political gatherings, faints strategically to avoid signing documents, and develops pregnancy cravings for foods only available from merchants who owe her favors. When Lord Robert's brother suggests she's too delicate to manage estate affairs, she responds by conducting a 12-hour audit of castle finances while pointedly sipping ginger tea for nausea. The succession politics are Byzantine. If it's a boy, 3 different uncles will claim guardianship rights. If it's a girl, she's already promised to 5 different alliances depending on who's winning which war. Lady Catherine maintains detailed correspondence with lawyers disguised as thank you notes for baby gifts, ensuring her child's inheritance is legally airtight. She knows medieval law better than most judges, hidden behind the facade of a breeding woman who only cares about nursery decorations. You watch her navigate the poisonous gift economy with terrifying skill. That herbal tea from her sister-in-law, fed to the dogs first, the beautiful tapestry for the nursery, examined for needle-sharp objects hidden in the weave, the wet nurse candidates, background checked through the servant network for loyalties, diseases, and suspicious connections. She trusts no one except her inner circle of women who taste her food, test her bathwater, and sleep in shifts outside her door. The religious politics add another layer. The church insists she confess all sins before birth in case she dies. But confession means revealing secrets that could destroy alliances. She manages this by confessing to elderly priests with poor hearing, mumbling about generic sins while keeping the real intelligence locked away. The bishop sends holy relics to ensure a safe delivery. She accepts them graciously while relying on Margot's herbs and the old gods honored in nighttime gatherings. Here's where it gets properly medieval. Lady Catherine is negotiating her potential death. She's written 3 different wills depending on various scenarios, hidden with 3 different allies. If she dies in childbirth, statistically likely, her property distributions will trigger specific political consequences. She's essentially programming her posthumous revenge against enemies while ensuring her child's protection. The documents are masterpieces of legal manipulation that would make corporate lawyers weep with envy. The baby's legitimacy becomes a weapon everyone wants to control. Rivals spread rumors about Lord Robert's potency, suggesting the child isn't his. Lady Catherine counters by publicly displaying affection for her husband, while privately documenting every night he visited her chambers. She maintains witness testimonies, lunar calendars corresponding to conception, and even has the castle priest ready to swear oaths about her virtue. It's basically medieval CSI, pregnancy unit. Historians still debate whether noble women had any agency during pregnancy. But here's Lady Catherine conducting international diplomacy via baby clothes. The layette she's preparing includes fabrics from every potential ally: French silk, Flemish wool, Italian lace. Each gift, accepted or rejected, sends political messages. when she embroiders her family arms slightly larger than her husband's on the christening gown. She's staking claims that lawyers will argue about for generations. The pregnancy cravings become intelligence-gathering missions, and she desperately needs specific foods that require servants to visit certain merchants who happen to have information about troop movements. Her ladies-in-waiting travel to procure special items, really conducting spy missions disguised as maternal whims. One craving for Portuguese oranges results in a trade agreement that will fund her child's education regardless of political upheavals. The birth preparations look like planning for a siege. Lady Catherine stockpiles resources, not just for the delivery but for the power vacuum that follows. She knows she'll be vulnerable post-birth, so she's pre-positioning allies, pre-signing documents, and pre-bribing anyone who might threaten her child. The nursery contains hidden weapons, escape routes, and enough gold to fund a small army. She's not just having a baby, she's launching a political dynasty. As her time approaches, the castle holds its breath. Everyone calculates odds, places bets, and positions themselves for the aftermath. Lady Catherine continues her correspondence, her negotiations, her careful dance of survival. Inside her, an unborn child kicks, already a player in games that started before conception and will continue long after birth. Medieval pregnancy isn't about pickles and mood swings. It's about power, survival, and playing multi-generational chess with lives as stakes. Lady Constance arrives at morning court dressed in widow's weeds that cost more than a knight's ransom. And you immediately understand why medieval men should fear widows more than Vikings. Her husband died 3 days ago. You watched her feed him broth yesterday while calculating inheritance taxes. And she's already transformed from dutiful wife to property magnate who makes modern real estate moguls look like amateurs. The mourning veil conveniently hides the satisfied smile as she presents documents that make grown men. The transformation is breathtaking. Yesterday, Lady Constance needed her husband's permission to donate to the church. Today, she controls 3 estates, 2 mills, a fleet of fishing boats, and enough agricultural land to feed a small army. Medieval law, in one of history's great ironies, gives widows more property rights than any other women. She can buy, sell, sue, and conduct business under her own seal. The same lords who insisted women were too weak for commerce now scramble to partner with her. You watch her demolish Lord William's attempt to claim guardianship over her estates. She quotes property law with the precision of someone who's been studying for this moment throughout her marriage. Every document is perfect, every seal legitimate, every witness strategically chosen. When he suggests she needs male guidance, she produces account books showing she's been managing these properties for years, while her husband drooled into his wine. The court has no choice but to confirm her rights. The economic maneuvering begins immediately. Lady Constance negotiates every contract signed by her late husband, usually getting better terms because medieval merchants prefer dealing with someone who actually understands numbers. She fires stewards who thought they could skim profits from a helpless widow and replaces them with her own agents, many of them women who've been training in her shadow network. Within a week, her estates run more efficiently than they have in decades. What's brilliant is how she leverages social expectations. She maintains perfect mourning behavior in public, tears on demand, religious devotion, refusal to remarry for at least a year. This performance prevents criticism while she restructures her entire economic empire. Lords who might challenge a rebellious wife can't attack a grieving widow without looking monstrous. She weaponizes their chivalry against them while building financial independence that would shock modern feminists. The widow network reveals itself as Lady Constance receives visits from other bereaved women. They're not offering condolences. They're proposing business partnerships. Lady Eleanor, widowed 5 years ago, owns the largest wool operation in the county. Dame Margaret controls river shipping routes. Her husband never knew existed. Together, they form economic alliances that bypass guild restrictions and noble oversight. It's a medieval corporation run entirely by women's society. Things are too grief-stricken to function. You're amazed by the financial instruments they develop. Lady Constance creates what amounts to medieval venture capital, funding other widows' business expansions in exchange for profit shares. She invests in everything from breweries to book copying, understanding diversification centuries before portfolio theory. When she loans money, the interest rates are competitive but fair. She's building long-term relationships, not quick exploitations. The legal expertise displayed makes you wonder if these women have secret law degrees. Lady Constance navigates property law, inheritance rights, and contract obligations with ease. She knows which courts favor widows, which judges take bribes, and which legal precedents support her claims. Her library contains more legal texts than poetry, though she hides them behind volumes of religious meditations appropriate for a mourning woman. Historians still argue about whether medieval widows really exercised significant economic power or just managed household accounts. Here's your answer. Lady Constance just negotiated an international trade agreement with Hanseatic merchants while wearing mourning clothes. She's importing Baltic amber and exporting English wool, calculating exchange rates across 3 currencies while pretending to be too overcome with grief to eat. The performance deserves awards. The remarriage pressure begins immediately, but Lady Constance plays this game expertly. She entertains suitors to avoid seeming difficult while making demands no man will meet. She wants control of her property after marriage, illegal. The right to conduct business independently, socially impossible. And her children from the first marriage to inherit everything, breaking primogeniture. Each rejected suitor leaves thinking she's unreasonable rather than realizing she's choosing independence. The real power move comes when Lady Constance establishes her own court. Not legally, that would be too obvious, but merchants, tenants, and petitioners learn to approach her directly rather than going through male intermediaries. She holds social gatherings that function as business meetings, resolves disputes with the authority of a judge, and distributes patronage that creates loyalty networks spanning the kingdom. She's essentially running a parallel government from her solar. Her investment in other women's enterprises creates ripple effects, and the alewife she funded now runs the largest tavern in 3 towns. The seamstress she backed employs 20 women and controls luxury clothing distribution. Each success story creates another ally, another node in the network, another proof that women can run businesses better than their husbands did. Lady Constance isn't just getting rich, she's funding a quiet revolution. The property accumulation strategy is particularly clever. She buys land from desperate nobles who need quick cash, offering fair prices but demanding full ownership rights. She consolidates holdings to create efficient estates, something her husband never bothered with. When Lord Robert hints at forced remarriage, she casually mentions that her estates supply most of the castle's food. The threat is subtle but effective. Disturb her, and everyone goes hungry. By evening, Lady Constance has conducted more business than her husband managed in a year. She reviews contracts, approves loans, and plans expansions while maintaining the fiction of overwrought grief. Tomorrow she'll attend his funeral and weep convincingly, while mentally calculating how much his death improved her financial position. Medieval widowhood isn't about mourning. It's about finally getting to run the empire you built, while pretending to be decorative. Sister Agatha arrives for her weekly spiritual guidance visit, but the leather satchel she carries contains more intelligence than prayers. You follow her to Lady Margaret's private chapel, where their confession session sounds suspiciously like a briefing from medieval MI6. The elderly nun who runs the convent 3 miles away has built a spy network that would make modern intelligence agencies jealous, all while maintaining perfect religious devotion that keeps her above suspicion. The convent itself serves as an information hub connecting castles across the region. Nuns travel freely under religious protection, carrying prayer requests that encode military intelligence, economic data, and political scandals. Sister Agatha produces a psalm book where the marginalia contains troop movements reported by her sisters along the Scottish border. The illuminated letters are beautiful. The coded messages about French alliance negotiations hidden within them are even more impressive. You realize these religious women exploit the one thing medieval men universally respect: spiritual authority. Lords who would torture secular spies donate gold to convents whose abbesses know their darkest secrets. The confession seal protects intelligence better than any encryption. And who suspects elderly nuns of running espionage operations? Sister Agatha mentions casually that her convent's prayer network includes sisters in Rome, Paris, and Jerusalem. That's not spiritual coverage. That's international intelligence gathering. The recruitment system is genius. Noble families send excess daughters to convents, thinking they're solving succession problems. Instead, they're providing Sister Agatha with educated women who maintain family connections across enemy lines. Lady Catherine's cousin became a nun after her father's political disgrace. She now channels information from the royal court through religious correspondence that no one dares intercept. Every unwanted daughter becomes a potential asset in this holy spy network. What's particularly brilliant is how they use religious activities as cover. Pilgrimage routes become courier services. Prayer vigils allow all-night message decoding. Charity visits to noble houses include careful observation of defenses, resources, and loyalties. When Sister Agatha mentions she'll pray for Lord William's soul, she's really saying his assassination attempt failed and he's fled to France. Intelligence her network confirmed before his own allies knew. The economic espionage is equally impressive. Convents need funding, so these nuns track every noble family's financial status with banker-like precision. Sister Agatha knows which lords are secretly bankrupt, which merchants evade taxes, and which bishops sell church positions. She uses this information strategically. A whispered word about someone's debts can redirect donations to her convent or ensure favorable treatment for her allies. It's holy blackmail with heavenly deniability. You watch Sister Agatha deliver intelligence that changes Lady Margaret's entire defensive strategy. The French aren't planning to attack from the south as expected. They're circling through monastery lands in the north, guided by monks who've been bribed. This information came from a novice nun who noticed unusual supply purchases at her brother monastery. The girl thought she was reporting suspicious food expenses. She actually uncovered a major military operation. The coded communication methods are surprisingly sophisticated. They use liturgical calendars where saints' days correspond to different nobles, allowing messages like prayers for St. Catherine's feast to mean Duke Catherine is planning rebellion. Musical notation encodes numbers. Troop counts become hymn arrangements. Even their embroidery contains intelligence, with different flowers representing different castles and stem arrangements indicating alliance status. It's an entire intelligence language hidden in religious devotion. Historians still debate whether medieval nuns were truly cloistered or maintained worldly connections. Sister Agatha's operation answers that definitively. These women are more connected than Amazon delivery drivers. Her network includes not just nuns but lay sisters, religious benefactors, and women taking temporary religious refuge. When noble wives flee to convents to escape violent husbands, they bring fresh intelligence. When merchant widows take religious vows, they add economic expertise. The protection this network offers is remarkable. Lady Margaret's daughter will soon travel to her wedding, and Sister Agatha arranges convent stays along the route. These aren't just rest stops. They're safe houses staffed by women who'll die protecting their charge. The abbesses have evacuation plans, weapon caches, blessed for use against heretics, of course, and connections to fighting men who owe the church favors. It's witness protection, medieval style. The intelligence analysis happening in convents rivals university scholarship. These nuns correlate information from multiple sources, identify patterns, and predict political movements with scary accuracy. Sister Agatha presents Lady Margaret with a detailed assessment of succession scenarios if the king dies, based on intelligence from 17 convents. Each scenario includes probability percentages that would impress modern analysts. They're not just collecting intelligence, they're processing it into actionable strategies. What really amazes you is the long-term planning. Sister Agatha is training her successor, a sharp young woman who entered the convent after her family lost everything in political upheaval. This girl learns codes, builds contacts, and develops analytical skills while appearing to study scripture. The network will outlive its current operators because they're building institutions, not just personal connections. Medieval spycraft with succession planning. How very corporate. The meeting concludes with prayers that contain next week's intelligence priorities. Lady Margaret needs information about Baltic trade routes, encoded as prayers for northern saints. And Sister Agatha will activate her Hanseatic contacts. They exchange holy relics that definitely don't contain hidden messages. Embrace with sisterly affection that's absolutely not a dead drop technique. And part ways looking like two religious women strengthened by shared faith. And as Sister Agatha leaves, you realize these spy nuns represent medieval women's ultimate hack. They've taken the one institution men allow them to control and transformed it into an intelligence network that influences kingdoms. Every prayer hides a report. Every pilgrimage carries intelligence. Every holy sister is a potential spy. The meek might inherit the earth, but the nuns are mapping it first. Lady Margaret's private chamber looks innocent enough. Tapestries depicting virtuous women. Prayer books arranged just so. A half-finished embroidery of St. Catherine draped over a chair. But you've learned to see past medieval decoration. And that locked chest in the corner practically screams secrets. When she finally opens it for inventory, you discover a black market that would make the Silk Road jealous, all hidden beneath linen shifts and lavender sachets. The first layer contains expected items, jewelry, property deeds, personal letters, but lift the false bottom, because of course there's a false bottom. And you're staring at enough contraband to start several scandals, love letters that could end dynasties, signed contracts for assassinations that never happened. And, sweet medieval Jesus, is that a vial of poison labeled as headache remedy? Lady Margaret handles each item like a stockbroker reviewing portfolios, calculating political value with terrifying precision. The love letters alone could reshape the kingdom. Lord William's passionate declarations to someone definitely not his wife, written in his own hand with specific dates that correspond to his heir's conception timeline. The bishop's correspondence with a merchant's daughter includes theological arguments for why their relationship is blessed by God. Creative interpretation at its finest. Lady Margaret doesn't judge. She just files them according to potential usefulness. A medieval backup drive of human weakness. You're particularly fascinated by the coded merchant records. These aren't official accounts. They're shadow books tracking real transactions hidden from tax collectors and guild inspectors. Lady Margaret runs import operations that bypass every regulation, bringing in Syrian silk during trade embargoes, Baltic amber through enemy territory, and spices that supposedly aren't available outside royal courts. Her chamber is basically a medieval Amazon warehouse with better security and more profitable margins. The medical supplies hidden here would horrify the church. Herbs for women's troubles that everyone knows prevent or end pregnancies. Tinctures that ensure deep sleep permanently, if the dose is wrong. And compounds that mimic illness so convincingly even trained physicians are fooled. Each bottle is carefully labeled with innocent names. Sister Mary's headache tonic contains enough opium to fell a horse. The apothecary section doubles as evidence of how medieval women practiced chemistry, while men debated how many angels could dance on a pin. What really amazes you is the document collection, marriage contracts with blank spaces for names, allowing instant legitimization of bastards, papal dispensations with suspicious seals that might be forgeries or might be real. Who's going to risk checking? Letters of credit from Italian banks, property deeds with flexible dates, and enough blackmail material to control half the nobility. Lady Margaret isn't just hiding contraband. She's stockpiling power in material form. The weapons cache surprises even your cynical modern mind. Hidden among hairpins and brooches are stilettos thin enough to slide between ribs, rings with hidden compartments for poison, and needles that look decorative but are clearly designed for non-textile penetration. The prayer beads contain garroting wire. The perfume bottles have false tops hiding substances that definitely aren't lavender water. It's an assassin's toolkit disguised as feminine accessories. Historians still debate whether noble women engaged in direct political violence. Here's your evidence. Lady Margaret's collection includes detailed intelligence on every castle's layout within 3 days' ride, annotated with guard rotations and weak points. She has architectural drawings that show secret passages, lists of bribable servants, and timetables for when lords are most vulnerable. This isn't defensive information. It's invasion planning hidden in a lady's chamber. The financial instruments are particularly clever. Promissory notes that could bankrupt merchant families, loans given under terms that basically constitute ownership, an investment record showing Lady Margaret owns parts of businesses her husband thinks belong to his allies. She's been building a shadow economy from her chamber, controlling trade routes through proxy merchants and shell companies that won't be invented officially for centuries. The international connections evident in this collection stagger you. Letters in Arabic from Damascus merchants, Greek shipping manifests, even what looks like Chinese silk samples with correspondence in languages you don't recognize. Lady Margaret's network extends beyond Europe, facilitated by women who transcend borders through marriage, religion, and trade. Her chamber contains proof of global commerce centuries before official history admits women participated. The really dangerous items are the recipes, not for food, for everything else. How to make Greek fire, supposedly a lost secret. How to forge convincing seals. How to create invisible ink from common household items. How to poison someone slowly enough that it looks like natural illness. These aren't collected randomly. They're organized by usefulness, annotated with successful applications, and cross-referenced with available ingredients. It's a how-to manual for medieval espionage. The protection mechanisms for this cache show serious planning. The chest itself has 3 different locks requiring keys kept by different trusted women. The poison bottles are sealed with wax that changes color if tampered with. The documents are treated with something that makes them illegible if exposed to heat. Try to burn the evidence, and it vanishes anyway. Lady Margaret has better operational security than most modern intelligence agencies. As she closes the chest, Lady Margaret mentions casually that every great lady maintains such insurance. The contents aren't just for her use. They're legacy items for her daughters, ensuring future generations of women have leverage in a world designed to keep them powerless. This chamber doesn't just hide contraband. It preserves female agency in material form, ready for deployment when patriarchy gets too oppressive. The pilgrim who arrives at dawn doesn't match your expectations. She's too young, too well dressed beneath that rough cloak, and her eyes scan the castle defences with military precision. Lady Isabel embraces this holy traveller like a long-lost sister. But you catch the subtle hand signals, the weighted purse changing hands, and the way conversation stops when servants approach. You're witnessing medieval espionage disguised as religious devotion. And these female pilgrims make modern courier services look amateur. The pilgrimage scam is brilliant in its simplicity. Women can travel to holy sites without male guardians, protected by religious custom and social expectation. Who would dare molest someone seeking divine grace? This cultural loophole creates perfect cover for intelligence operations spanning continents. Your pilgrim just walked from Canterbury carrying messages that would start wars if intercepted. Hidden in a prayer book, hollowed out with surgical precision, you follow the women to Lady Isabel's chamber where the real debriefing begins. The pilgrim, actually Lady Joan from a rival kingdom, unwinds her supposedly simple cloak to reveal hidden pockets containing enough intelligence to reshape European politics, wax tablets with troop positions that will self-destruct if broken incorrectly, silk ribbons embroidered with trade route changes. Even her walking staff is hollow, containing letters that detail succession plans for 3 different kingdoms. The coding system makes you dizzy. Religious destinations correspond to political targets. Jerusalem means London. Rome indicates Paris. Santiago points to Edinburgh. Prayer requests encode military intelligence. Prayers for my husband's soul means he's planning betrayal. Prayers for safe childbirth indicates new alliances being born. The entire pilgrimage network operates on double meanings that transform spiritual journeys into spy missions. What's particularly impressive is the authentication system. Lady Joan proves her identity through questions only someone in the network would know. Which saint Lady Isabel's mother prayed to during childbirth? What flowers grew in the convent garden where they first met? She produces a pilgrim badge that looks standard, but contains tiny alterations marking her as network verified. Medieval 2-factor authentication using holy relics. The intelligence Lady Joan carries rewrites everything you thought you knew about current politics. The French king's mistress is pregnant, significant because his wife just died mysteriously. The Pope is secretly negotiating with Muslim leaders, heretical if true. English merchants are smuggling weapons to Scottish rebels through monastery wine shipments. Each piece of information is corroborated by multiple sources across Lady Joan's pilgrimage route, creating intelligence verification that modern agencies would admire. You realize these women don't just carry messages, they conduct active intelligence gathering. Lady Joan spent 3 nights in a monastery where the king's brother was hiding, extracting information while playing the simple penitent. She accidentally shared meals with merchant caravans, learning trade routes and supply weaknesses. Her confession to a drunk priest yielded military secrets he'd learned from soldiers seeking absolution. Every step of pilgrimage doubled as reconnaissance. The network's reach astounds you. Lady Joan mentions sisters in pilgrimage from Byzantium to Britain, all moving under religious protection while building intelligence networks that span continents. They coordinate through convents, share information at shrines, and maintain covers so perfect that historians still believe medieval women rarely travelled. The joke's on academia. These women see more of the world than most merchants, just with better alibis. Historians debate whether medieval women had geographical knowledge, But Lady Joan sketches accurate maps from memory while discussing her travels. She knows mountain passes armies haven't discovered, river fords that bypass bridge tolls, and castle approaches that don't appear on official charts. Her pilgrimage took her through territory male spies couldn't enter, gathering intelligence impossible to obtain through conventional means. The economic intelligence proves equally valuable. These pilgrims track price fluctuations across regions, identifying shortages before merchants notice. Lady Joan reports that Spanish wool prices will spike next season due to sheep disease she observed while praying at rural shrines. She knows which Italian banks are overextended from conversations with fellow pilgrims who happen to be bankers' wives. The pilgrimage network functions as medieval market research with a religious cover story. The protection these women provide each other is remarkable. Lady Joan carries tokens from powerful abbesses, crosses, rings, sealed letters that guarantee sanctuary at any convent. She knows which inns are safe for unaccompanied women, which routes avoid bandits, which lords respect pilgrim immunity. The network has spent generations building infrastructure that lets women travel freely in a world designed to keep them stationary. What really impresses you is the long-term planning. Lady Joan isn't just carrying this year's intelligence. She's establishing routes for next generation's operations. She recruits young women at shrines, identifies potential safe houses, and builds relationships that will serve the network for decades. Each pilgrimage strengthens the web, making it harder for authorities to detect or disrupt. The meeting concludes with plans for Lady Joan's return journey. She'll carry responses to the intelligence she delivered, new questions for her sources, and items that definitely aren't weapons disguised as religious souvenirs. Lady Isabel provides her with fresh pilgrim badges for different shrines, each one a key to another part of the network. They pray together, genuinely, because faith and espionage aren't mutually exclusive in medieval minds. As Lady Joan departs at dusk, you understand how pilgrimage became the ultimate hack for medieval women's freedom. They exploited religious devotion to build intelligence networks, economic connections, and personal autonomy that official history never records. Every shrine visit doubled as a dead drop. Every prayer circle shared intelligence. Every holy journey mapped territories men thought they controlled. The castle kitchen erupts into controlled chaos as preparations for tomorrow's feast begin. But you've learned to recognize orchestrated performances between the shouting about pastry thickness and debates over sauce consistency. You catch whispered negotiations that would determine the fate of two noble houses. Lady Margaret stands with the Countess of Westford near the spice stores, supposedly discussing cinnamon quantities while actually brokering a marriage alliance that will shift 3 counties' allegiances. The kitchen provides perfect cover for high-stakes diplomacy. Male nobles would never lower themselves to discuss menu planning, creating a female-only space where real business happens. You watch duchesses debate wine selections while secretly negotiating trade routes. Baronesses argue about seating arrangements that actually determine military alliances. The feast preparation is statecraft disguised as domestic duty. And these women are playing politics with more skill than any parliamentary session. Agnes, the cook, facilitates these negotiations with the skill of a Swiss banker. She creates reasons for rival ladies to work side by side. Suddenly, they both need to oversee the sugar sculptures, requiring hours of close proximity. Old feuds dissolve over shared labor of kneading dough, and new alliances form while stuffing capons. The kitchen heat breaks down formal barriers, allowing honest conversation impossible in the great hall's ceremonial coldness. You're amazed by the information flow during food preparation. Lady Constance mentions her son needs a bride while seasoning the venison. The Duchess of Blackwater notes her daughter's dowry includes 3 ships while checking the fish. By the time the pies are assembled, 3 marriages have been arranged, 2 trade partnerships established, and a territorial dispute resolved, and all of this happens through casual conversation that men would dismiss as feminine chatter about recipes. The coded negotiations are particularly clever. This sauce needs more salt, means the terms aren't generous enough. The meat is too tough, indicates stubborn negotiating positions. Perfect sweetness signals agreement. They conduct complex diplomatic exchanges through culinary metaphors, while their hands stay busy with legitimate feast preparation. Even you, knowing what to look for, struggle to separate actual cooking discussion from international relations. What's brilliant is how the physical labor provides thinking time, while their hands perform repetitive tasks, chopping, stirring, kneading. Their minds calculate political advantages. Lady Margaret uses the rhythm of grinding spices to work through a particularly complex inheritance dispute. The meditative quality of food preparation allows for strategic planning impossible in formal negotiations where every word is scrutinized. The feast menu itself encodes political messages. Serving dishes from specific regions honors those alliances. The exclusion of certain ingredients snubs enemy territories. Even the decorative elements carry meaning. Sugar sculptures depicting castles indicate territorial claims, while the arrangement of roasted peacocks communicates power hierarchies. These women are creating edible propaganda that will influence drunk nobles more effectively than any treaty. Historians still argue about whether medieval women participated in diplomacy. But here's your evidence. The Countess of Westford just negotiated military support from 3 different duchies while making marzipan roses. She offered her navy to protect merchant ships in exchange for favorable trade terms, all during a discussion about whether the roses should be pink or red. And the male ambassadors upstairs are still arguing about protocol, while the women have already settled next year's war. The quality control process doubles as intelligence verification, as they taste sauces and sample pastries. These ladies share information gathered through their networks. Each woman contributes puzzle pieces, servant observations, merchant reports, pilgrimage intelligence, creating a complete picture of political reality. By the time they've confirmed the seasoning is correct, they've also confirmed troop movements across 3 kingdoms. You notice daughters watching from corners, learning lessons no university teaches. They see how to leverage domestic spaces for political power, how to conduct diplomacy through indirection, how to build alliances while appearing to discuss pudding recipes. This is their real education. Not the secret Latin lessons, but the practical politics of survival in a male-dominated world. The poison checking happens so casually, you almost miss it. Every dish gets tested, not just for flavor, but for safety. These women know which spices mask common poisons, which cooking methods neutralize toxins, which serving vessels react to dangerous substances. They're basically running a forensic laboratory while preparing dinner. The fact that no noble has been successfully poisoned at Lady Margaret's feasts speaks to their expertise. The preparation crescendos as dishes come together, and so do the negotiations. Final terms are settled while garnishing the roasts. Documents are mentally drafted while arranging fruit displays. By the time the kitchen army marches platters upstairs, they've restructured regional politics more effectively than any official summit. Tomorrow, men will feast and congratulate themselves on their alliances, never knowing the deals were concluded in the kitchen they'd never deigned to enter. And as the women disperse to prepare for tomorrow's performance, because the feast itself is just theatre compared to today's real work, you realize these kitchen negotiations represent medieval realpolitik at its finest. They've transformed a space of supposed female subordination into a center of power, conducting diplomacy through dinner preparation, The men can keep their throne rooms and council chambers. The women will determine the kingdom's fate while arguing about gravy consistency. Dawn breaks over the castle as you prepare to leave. And the morning light illuminates everything differently now. The same stones that seemed to imprison women when you arrived now reveal themselves as the framework for an intricate power structure you never imagined existed. Lady Margaret stands on the battlements, directing the morning activities. And you see her not as a decorative noble wife, but as the chief executive of a complex operation that would humble modern corporations, Your journey through this medieval women's world has shattered every preconception. The kitchen servants loading wagons aren't just distributing food. They're maintaining intelligence networks that span kingdoms. The noble daughters practicing embroidery in the early light aren't learning decorative arts. They're encoding mathematical principles and astronomical observations into thread. Even the laundresses beginning their morning work are sorting more than linens. They're processing information that will influence political decisions across Europe. The transformation in your perspective feels almost physical. When a merchant woman arrives for early morning trade negotiations, you see past her humble dress to the international businesswoman who manipulates currency exchanges with ease. When Sister Agatha departs after dawn prayers, you recognize the spymaster returning to her convent command center. The grieving widow in the chapel isn't just mourning. She's planning economic expansion that will triple her holdings within a year. You pause at the castle gate, watching the morning routines with new eyes. The midwife heading to the village carries medical knowledge that won't be discovered by male physicians for centuries. The young bride arriving for a visit brings intelligence from her husband's household that will reshape local alliances. Every woman moving through these spaces operates on multiple levels, maintaining public personas while secretly running the medieval world's most essential systems. The secret education chambers continue their work as you watch Lady Catherine's daughters slip into the solar. Their lessons in needlework will produce another generation of women who speak 5 languages while pretending to struggle with basic French. The knowledge hidden in those hollowed-out prayer books will survive witch hunts, wars, and social upheaval, because these women understand that information is power, and power must be carefully concealed to be preserved. What strikes you most powerfully is the interconnectedness of it all. The merchant networks feed intelligence to the noble ladies who protect the merchants' trade routes. The midwives share medical knowledge with nuns who provide sanctuary for women fleeing dangerous situations. The kitchen servants coordinate with pilgrims who carry messages to distant allies. It's a feminine ecosystem operating within and around male power structures, more resilient because it's invisible to those who would destroy it. The economic revolution these women are creating will echo through centuries. Their lending circles and shadow banks fund innovations that official history credits to men. Their international trade networks establish patterns of commerce that will build the modern world. Every negotiation conducted over feast preparation, every alliance forged in pilgrimage, every investment hidden in widows' accounts contributes to an economic transformation that historians still struggle to explain. You realize the castle's thick walls protected more than just physical bodies. They sheltered a complete civilization that operated by different rules. Inside these fortifications, women created spaces where intelligence mattered more than strength, where cooperation trumped competition, where long-term thinking defeated short-term violence. They built this world in the shadows because sunlight would have burned it down. But shadows have their own power. The morning sun climbs higher, and you see a young kitchen maid slip a coded message to a departing merchant. The cycle continues. The networks pulse with life. The secret world thrives beneath its careful camouflage. These medieval women haven't just survived in a system designed to minimize them. They've built a parallel system that often runs more efficiently than the official one. They've taken every restriction placed on them and transformed it into an opportunity. Your footsteps echo across the drawbridge as you leave, carrying knowledge that transforms everything you thought you knew about medieval history. The great battles and noble deeds that fill chronicle pages are just surface ripples on a deeper ocean of female agency, intelligence, and power. The real medieval history was written in kitchen conversations, encoded in embroidery, whispered in confessionals, and hidden in widows' account books. Looking back one last time, you see the castle not as a monument to male military might, but as a hive of female industry, intelligence, and innovation. Every tower contains secrets. Every chamber holds networks. Every woman walking those halls carries more power than her costume suggests. You're leaving with the greatest secret of all. Medieval women didn't just endure their world. They ran it, shaped it, and transformed it, all while pretending to be exactly what men expected. The road stretches ahead, leading back to a world that still underestimates women's historical contributions, but you carry with you the truth about castle walls and the extraordinary secret lives lived behind them. The medieval women you've met, merchants and midwives, nobles and nuns, widows and wives, have shown you that power takes many forms, and the most lasting power is often the kind that knows how to hide in plain sight. As you take a last breath of medieval morning air, tinged with wood smoke and possibility, you understand that these women's greatest triumph wasn't just surviving or even thriving. It was building systems and networks that would outlast the castles themselves, creating ripples of female agency that still move through our world today, hidden behind different walls but flowing with the same determined current. The castle fades into morning mist behind you, but its lessons remain vivid. Medieval women lived secret lives of extraordinary complexity, wielding power through intelligence, cooperation, and strategic invisibility. They transformed every restriction into opportunity, every domestic duty into political action, every prayer into coded intelligence. Behind those stone walls, they created a civilization within a civilization and changed the world while pretending to embroider roses.